Hey guys, Andrew Esquivel here, back with a tutorial. So today we're going to be talking about how to get rid of green or red bush algae, which is a type of algae that is just absolutely ridiculous to try and manage. Now there are some fish that will eat it, but there are very, very few. And unfortunately, those types of fish just simply wouldn't get along with the stock that I have in my tanks that have the issue. Mainly my little shrimp buddies. So, this is the algae right here. It's very unsightly, although it is harmless. But, you know, a fish tank is part functionality and part aesthetics. So we want to get rid of the green bush algae. How do we go about doing that? Well, there are several methods out there, but one of the more common methods is to use hydrogen peroxide. Now, I know when I say hydrogen peroxide, that might scare some people because it is a scientific name of a substance, but I've been testing this on a few of my other tanks, and so far there are no adverse effects that I can see over the course of the last week for any of my shrimp. So, let's talk about hydrogen peroxide really quick. This is 3% 3% hydrogen peroxide, and the inactive ingredient is water, so 97% of it is water. Now, the general consensus on dosing for hydrogen peroxide is about 3 milliliters per gallon. Do not exceed that. You don't have to use that much. Sometimes I do 3 milliliters per 2 gallons if I'm just being cautious and want to test the waters. Now, once again, the name hydrogen peroxide might scare some people because it's a scientific name, but it's the same exact thing as saying, hey, did you know your fish tank might contain dihydrogen monoxide? And people are like, oh, dihydrogen monoxide, oh, that doesn't sound good, I'm a little freaked out. But, fun fact, dihydrogen monoxide is just a way to pronounce H2O, and H2O is water. So yes, if your fish tank doesn't contain dihydrogen monoxide, your fish might not be alive. But what I'm getting at when I say that is, yes, just because it's a scientific name doesn't mean you have to fear it or freak out about it. It's basically just understanding how it works and reacts with your systems that's more important than the name itself. So, what we're going to do is take this little syringe I got at Walgreens. They give these away for free most of the time, and as you can see, it has ratings in milliliters, which is perfect, because we're just going to pull out 3 milliliters at a time, and since this is a 10-gallon tank, I can do it up to 10 times. It's 3 milliliters per gallon, and I'm going to try and direct this stuff as closely as I can onto the most heavily affected areas. This is not a quick fix, by the way. This will take several weeks to work. And you only do this once a week at the most. So you do 3 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide at 3% per gallon once a week for 3 weeks. And the algae should start to be dissipating. Alright, so we have 3 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide. And I know it's not going to focus on it right now because I have it focused, the camera here, as closely as I can on the algae. So, I'm going to open up the lid here. We're going to do our first dosing in this tank of hydrogen peroxide. See, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to get the syringe as close to the algae as possible. And when I'm on the algae, I can start pushing down the plunger and try and spread as much of the hydrogen peroxide directly on the affected area as I can. And it should float down and sit on top of the algae because, as I said before, hydrogen peroxide is more dense and will fall to the bottom of the tank, and if it rests on top of something like the top of the filter, that should sit nicely on top of it. And as you can see right now, we have a shrimp that's just hanging out right where I put the hydrogen peroxide. And shrimp don't care. Shrimp don't mind. Shrimp's having a good time. Shrimp doesn't mind at all that we just put hydrogen peroxide on it. So it's been like that with my other tanks that I've been testing to make sure this is, safe and I have the right idea. So, what's going to happen is you'll notice some kind of bubbles will form, and that's more or less a chemical reaction. But, without going into too many, hardcore specifics here, that is just 1/10 of the dose that I need to put in this tank. So what I want to do really quick, dry my hand off here, is I'm going to take the camera and try and get it as good focused on all this as possible. You'll see there's some bubbles forming coming out of it. That is the chemical reaction I'm talking about. Once again, a little shrimp buddy here doesn't mind. He's just going to keep, goofing around doing what he does. And the shrimps aren't affected by it. If they feel uncomfortable, they'll swim away. I have yet to see a shrimp actually feel genuinely uncomfortable to the point where they swim away. So, that was dose 1/10. And we basically repeat that 9 more times because that was 3 milliliters at 10 gallons. And you have to bear with me here because this is something relatively new. The fact of the matter is, if you don't want to see the entire steps, go ahead and skip forward in the video because I am more focused on the dosing than I am the recording at the moment. So just bear with me. Once again, we're going in and we're going to try and get it all over the affected areas where the algae is built up the most. So, at this point, it has been exactly 1 week since I started the hydrogen peroxide treatments in this tank. Let's take a look at the progress here. You see, a lot of the algae has turned white and is starting to die off. The shrimp still pick at it, and maybe they're eating it. Doesn't seem to have much effect on their health. Now, I will say this, one of my adult shrimp passed away, and I'm not sure if it's due to the hydrogen peroxide or some other unknown factor, although it did take several days after the treatment for that to happen. That being said, as you can see, I still have a ton of these baby neon yellow shrimp and 2 adults that seem to be doing just fine, so I kind of doubt that it's a reaction to the hydrogen peroxide simply because 1 out of 50 maybe 1 out of 40 or so shrimp realistically, it doesn't seem like a very strong case for the hydrogen peroxide being the main issue. But that being said, it does seem to be doing what it's supposed to be doing, so I'll be adding in a little more today in just a little bit, but keeping track, this is after 1 week. So at this point, we are officially at 3 weeks into the hydrogen peroxide dosing. And as you can see, quite a lot of that nasty green bush algae is gone. Now, I want to just clear the record really quick. On week 2, I decided that the first dose was so effective that I would not fully dose another 30 milliliters into the tank. Instead, I just put 5 to 6 milliliters in directly on the worst spots because, quite frankly, I didn't think there was any good reason to put much more in there. It just seems to be doing what we know it's going to do pretty well at the dosage I gave the first time around. So honestly, I'm just going to put one more round with 3 milliliters of hydrogen peroxide on the sponge filter, and I'm just going to leave it at that because it's cleared up quite a bit. So, as you can see down here, my little buddies are A-OK. We had one fatality, but that may have not really been due to the hydrogen peroxide. It may have just been some sort of anomaly. So, with that being said, it just goes to show this hydrogen peroxide really isn't harmful that I can detect to these little guys. So, as long as you don't overdose, as long as you just put it right in the concentrated spots, it seems to work pretty well. So, I hope this video was informative for you guys. If it was helpful, don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, show your friends. Check out my other videos. I got plenty of them. And as always, I'll see you next time. Stay fishy.